Today we're going to talk about something that runs deep in UK culture, and that is the glorification of alcohol. Whether it's a pint after work, whether it's celebrating a wedding, or cracking open the cans as soon as the sun comes out, which in the UK is not that common, alcohol is glorified. It is seen as this amazing thing that's going to answer all of our problems, going to make us really happy and give us loads of fun. If you're someone that feels the pressure to drink, you struggle to kind of move away from that societal norm of booze culture, then you're in the right place. Because in this video, I'm going to unpack why we have this glorification of alcohol. But I'm also going to explore how to step out of the room and create a life that you choose, not one that's dictated to you. My name's Dr. Alex George, and for over 2 years now, I've been alcohol-free. I've learned this new way of living, this new way of sobriety, which I really enjoy. It's changed my life, and I believe it can really help your life too. In this video, we're going to talk about how alcohol is glorified in the UK and why this has such a big impact on the way we view alcohol, but also how we learn to socialise, interact with the world, have fun, and deal with things like pressure. If you're someone that's felt the pressure to drink in the past, feeling like you need to drink alcohol, this might be a useful video to listen to, because we're going to be talking about why this happens, but also how you can step out of the room and learn a different way. If you haven't already, do subscribe to the YouTube channel. We make YouTube videos every week, every Sunday for you around alcohol-free living. Thank you very much. Let's get started. One of the things that really struck me when I started questioning whether I should quit alcohol or not was, how is this thing so glorified? Like, why is it such a big thing? Where does it come from? Like, if you actually think about it, alcohol is a part of almost every aspect of human life, particularly here in the UK and the Western world, but actually around the entire world. It's such a big part of everything. Like, whether you're going to a wedding, whether you're socialising with friends, whether you're watching sport, whether you're relaxing on a Friday, whether you're trying to unwind, it seems to be so ingrained. But how? If you actually think about it, it's kind of odd, because alcohol is just this chemical that when we drink it, it has an effect on our bodies. And yeah, cool, like, it has this impact that people kind of like, that buzz and so on, but how has it become so widespread? Why do we put alcohol on such a pedestal? It's funny, because if it's sunny like it is today and it's a Saturday, the immediate thing is, it's a sunny Saturday, let's crack open a beer, let's grab a 4-pack, let's go to the bar, or if you walk past like card shops, it'll say something like on the front, it's 12 o'clock, it's midday somewhere, or you see like fun like meme signs that basically are saying like, it's 5 o'clock somewhere in the world, go and enjoy a drink. And it really highlights for me the fact that we see alcohol as this thing that is going to give us so much joy and happiness in our life. It is sold to us quite literally. I'm going to talk about that in a second. It is sold to us as this magical thing that promises happiness, enjoyment, enrichment in our lives. And you have to question, where does that come from? If you look at history and you look into the past, alcohol's been around for a very, 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 very long time. Early fermentation of things like rums and ciders and so on, these developed into the vast array of alcohols and drinks that we have now, but it embedded in things like pub culture. This idea that we'd have a place where you'd come together, they'd sell alcohol in this place, and you'd chat while drinking the substance. Pub culture obviously is a big part of the UK, and actually in many ways, and in fairness, one of the things I think is hard sometimes is that I kind of like some of the pub culture, and I'm being honest with this, kind of like some of the pub culture and having a place to come together. My issue, I guess, with pub culture is when it has to be about the alcohol. Like, I still go to the pub, but I'll have an alcohol-free drink. So I'm still going to these places. I'm still enjoying it, but just with alcohol-free drink. But anyway, I digress. The point is, we have created a culture and society around this. So why? Why has this happened? Well, I think alcohol in itself gives a response that people feel disinhibited, they feel relaxed, they feel out of real life. And in a way, I think that's a key point. Pretty much since humans have been around, we have been looking for ways to get effed up or to escape reality. That is part of what humans have been doing, because, well, even in the early days of humanity, stress exists. Real life was challenging. It might look different today. It might not be the emails back then, it'd be something else, but there is this feeling that we want to escape. And I think alcohol has been posited and put forward as like, this is your answer. It's easily available, it's easy to consume, we can ship it around easily in containers and then people can consume it, and therefore it's become so widespread. And over the years, what's happened is that as things like marketing has come in, we've gone, we've got a substance which we can sell at a high price, people will drink a lot of it, most people will drink it and consume it regularly, we can make a lot of money here. So what happened then, once marketing started, is we started going, well, why don't we attach feelings of joy, feelings of escapism, feelings of purpose, of fun to marketing around this product, and then therefore people are going to believe, well, if I want to have fun, I'm going to drink. I'm going to need to drink. I mean, I'm not going to name specific alcohol companies, but certain brands have catchphrases that essentially are saying it's time to have a drink. It's o'clock. You know what I'm going to put in there. It is something that is being so cleverly used in marketing. Look at things like sports, for example, and this is an area I really have issue with, and there has been tightening up the legislation more recently, but people argue, and it's a difficult one, that now you're seeing alcohol-free or zero alcohol alternatives of drinks like beers being advertised in sporting venues, which in a way you could argue is still advertising the wider brand and the wider products they're selling. But anyway, that is a separate topic of its own. Let's focus on the main thing here, is that around sport particularly, that has been a vector that's been used for a good number of years now, for decades, to sell alcohol, around rugby, around football, around motor racing and so on. And actually, if you sit with it and you question, like, is that right? Like, how do I feel about that? Sport is something that's supposed to be about health. It's about community. It's about bringing people together. What happens when you give people a load of alcohol at football matches? What happens when you give a load of people alcohol in the pub watching sport? I mean, look at what happened in the Euros when we got to the final and England lost. I think there was something like the record highest number of calls to domestic violence lines. There's huge amount of antisocial behaviour. People were trashing London because they were drunk and England lost, or they were drunk. Would that have happened if they weren't drinking? And the point is, and we've got a question where the responsibility here is, if you're going to, show alcohol in adverts, for example, television adverts, you're watching football adverts, alcohol's advertised at half time. You've got children growing up watching that, seeing sport and football and alcohol. It is such a clever way to basically combine the two and provide this message of sport is about going along, having a beer and drinking. And it's only when you step out of all of that and question, like, where does that come from? Why do you need to drink to enjoy sport? Of course you don't. Of course you don't need to have a drink to enjoy sport, but you've been told time and time again and conditioned to believe this is the answer. What has perpetuated all of this, of the marketing, the fact it's ingrained in society, the fact that humans have been looking for escapism for a long time, and alcohol is like this way of, hey, it's going to be amazing, it'll solve all of our problems. Obviously, ironically, as most of us know, a significant number of our problems are either made worse with alcohol, or quite a few problems are caused by alcohol. One of the big things that really perpetuates this is the kind of social pressure, social expectation, the feeling that, come on, have a drink, or you're being boring, or why aren't you getting involved, or, oh, you're not drinking. This feeling that you're going to be rejected by the group, society, by other people because you don't consume alcohol. And that is, if you really think about it, a really sad thing, but also it's actually, it makes sense. Like, if you've got this vehicle of, we're telling everyone it's great, it's amazing, alcohol's about fun, it can be fun in life, you work hard, play hard, work to drink, get to the pub on a Thursday night, Thirsty Thursdays, all this stuff. And then you add to that this feeling of peer pressure that you'll be socially judged basically if you don't drink. Of course you're going to get pushed into alcohol. And often, like, the peer pressure stuff gets, disguised as banter, like, oh, just having a bit of banter or whatever, like pushing someone to drink. But actually it's not, it is peer pressure. And I think the combination of these things is what has made this kind of, particularly over the last 10, 20 years, this perfect storm of alcohol being pushed really hard. What is interesting is that particularly in the 90s, I think the early 2000s and into like the early 2010s and so on, it was really cool to be out partying and drunk. And it's something I really reflect on. If you're someone watching this and you used to have Facebook used to be full of nights out, being drunk, partying. It'd be like, out on the dance floor with a drink and all this kind of stuff. Now, people's Instagrams virtually never include that. When was the last time you saw on someone's Instagram, like someone posting themselves really drunk on a night out? It's actually, you see sometimes with a glass of alcohol in the hand perhaps, but much more now people don't want to be seen like that. And there's a huge shift, but particularly at that time, and if you look at studies in terms of binge drinking, that was a particular problem at that time because it was so glorified. And actually you got kudos on social media if you were drunk. If you had pictures of a wild night, messy night out, and you post it on Facebook, you actually had kudos for doing it. So all of these factors have meant over the years that alcohol has been glorified. What we're seeing now is a deconstruction of this. We're seeing people rejecting this and actually questioning it entirely, and that's why you're seeing such a huge number of people, a third of young people not drinking alcohol. There's a huge cultural shift. People don't want to show drinking on their Instagrams. Young people particularly are either not drinking at all or drinking a lot less. And that's because I think people are wising up to this reality, or they're becoming aware of the fact we're being sold a lie. Alcohol, of course, I'm not saying some people don't have fun having a drink, or I haven't had fun. Of course I've had fun having a drink in the past, but it is not this magic bullet of like, this thing is going to make your life amazing. And, as I've experienced, often there's way more downsides than are positives. So what do we do? How do we move forward? And if you're someone watching this thinking, well, I feel peer pressure and it's really hard because I've grown up and I've been taught in society that this is how we do everything is around alcohol, how do we change that? First thing is the awareness. So stepping out the room and looking back through the window, like peeping back through the window into the living room and looking what's going on is the first step. Because as soon as you're aware, you start creating autonomy, you start creating choice, you start creating distance. So that is the really important thing. When you're seeing the marketing on the football matches in between, first half, second half, before the games, going, I see what's going on here is the first step. You're creating distance. The next thing is realizing how much there is out there, way beyond alcohol, way beyond that can be enjoyed, that can be integrated. There is a life out there. I have been alcohol-free for over 2 years. If the life of being alcohol-free was worse than drinking alcohol, I'd drink. So if I was doing this and I was like, actually, genuinely there's no way to have fun outside of it, there is no social life, or the net of this is negative, I would drink. And I think that's something really important to hold on to, that when you do take that step over it, and if you're sober curious watching this and you take that step into trying sobriety, into alcohol-free living, what you'll see over time is that there is so much out there, the discovery process. So be curious is my second point. Be curious, be sober curious, be curious about what's outside of there. If we're saying to someone, the only way you can have fun is alcohol, what are the alternatives? What are other ways to have fun on a Friday night or on a weekend? How else can you connect with other people? What other hobbies could you do? Be curious about them. Test those things and try them, and you'll soon discover there is a much bigger world. Other parts of this, and a third part, I guess, I want to talk about, or the third thing that I think we need to think about, is how do we change this broadly in society? How do we stop pushing this message of alcohol's amazing, it's fun, it is the pinnacle of what you should aim for, you work hard to be able to have a party and go away and drink and all this kind of stuff. How do we move away from that? The way that we do it is we start talking about and highlighting the benefits of alcohol-free living, which is why I've created this YouTube channel, why a lot of people now, you're seeing creators talking about this and making this shift. I think having people who are role models in society going, hey, I don't drink and I have a great time. A lot of people that didn't drink in the past felt ashamed of that, and they wouldn't admit that they don't drink. They're trying to hide the fact they don't drink alcohol. So if you don't drink, it's not been like, I'm better because I don't drink. That's rubbish. We're not talking about that. But you don't have to be afraid. Perhaps you can say, well, I don't drink and I enjoy it. You're passing on to other people an experience that they might find useful. And then broadly, I think we need to look at things like change in education. We should be educating young people growing up, about alcohol, also educating people about alcohol-free living and what they can do outside of it. Also things like legislative change. I think we need to be tightening up on companies. Like, a question for you, what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Do you think it's right that a brand that sells alcohol should be allowed to advertise alcohol-free alternatives as a way to market the wider brand? That's a question I have. And listen, I'm saying all this, you know, and without an element of, I'm actually not judging even them about this. It's a wider discussion and thinking like, what is going on here? Look, I used to go to the Six Nations matches, sometimes with Guinness. Guinness would take me to Six Nations and I'd post with a Guinness at the Six Nations. So I'm not judging. We've all been there, right? We're learning, we're developing. So it's like, how do we move forward in a better way? I think some of that has to be questioning the marketing. I think we have to have a tighter feel on the words and the messages we use around alcohol. You wouldn't say, you know, imagine with smoking now, which obviously you can't advertise smoking at all, and the legislation on that becomes tighter and tighter and tighter. Imagine seeing adverts around smoking being like, the best thing about, you know, your working day is getting out and having a cigarette with your mate. I mean, you wouldn't see that being glorified. So I think over time what will happen is that I think there will be a continued cultural shift. I think that's already happening. We're seeing that, we're watching that happen. I think there's going to be a massive growth in that kind of alcohol-free alternative space, and I think that will draw people across who actually think, well, I want to be social, but I want to drink. And I do think that as people's perceptions change around alcohol and we start like pulling the curtain, we realise it's not this kind of magical, glorified thing, I think we'll see things like legislative change. Let's see. It'll be fascinating. Guys, thank you so much for watching this YouTube video. I hope it's been useful and interesting. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm just talking from my opinion, in my experience. When I'm not saying everything I'm saying is right, it is my thoughts, it's my opinion. Let me know what you think. We'll see you all in the next video. Of course, every Sunday I'll have a new video from me. Take care and goodbye.